Okay, Mongoose Jake here to do a long overdue internals guide and disassembly guide and internals guide to the Buzby Easy Fire. Now this is one I absolutely adored in my review. I've got two of them now, as you have the one here, and this is one I purchased with my own money straight from Target, as well as the one that was sent to me for review, and I have actually just simply furthered my very, very high opinion of it with the second one, just basically putting everything in concrete. As I've tried it and used it, it wasn't a fluke. The thing's great. It's one of the best out of the big four non-pro series blasters. Now, I'm not comparing it to a Nexus. Neither should you. It's a whole different ball game with this. This is comparable to basically Nerf's Elite 2.0. Now, if we still had something like the Retaliator, this would be Buzby's competition for it. But in the full length area, this blaster is got to be one of the best. It has to be. And because actually it seems like the hobby's kind of moved away from your typical like $20, $25 full length mag fed primary level blaster. This one shoots at about a little over 80 feet per second, which is good. I got like 85 out of this one compared to the 83 that I got out of the first one. So very good performance. We're going to see what makes it tick. Now, I did go ahead off camera. The only thing I've done so far is I took the stock apart. Now I noticed that there were a couple of mentions, because remember, I don't look at reviews of a blaster I haven't reviewed. Now once I've got my review done, that goes out the window. One of the complaints that I've seen both bots and blasters, as well as American Foam, they said about theirs was that they could get the stock to collapse. And, I mean, it takes a lot of force. My first one, basically, you have to slam it on the ground to get it to collapse. So it was really good. It held up to me and my usage. This one here, when I put some force and pulled it back into me, I was able to get it to collapse. So I wanted to look out and see why. Now, when you take the stock to get it apart is a pain. I don't recommend doing this. It's got an N-Strike compatible stock attachment point. Put your favorite stock on it and then be happy. However, if you're curious about how things work, like I am, I mean, the tinkering side is what got me into blasters and keeps me loving blasters. Of course, they're fun to use, but the tinkering side is kind of one of the bigger things for me. I tinker all the time, even if I don't show it. So we're going to look at the stock. I took it apart. And again, I don't recommend doing this. Buzby has went to extreme lengths to make this a pretty solid structure-wise. It has 6 small screws, so it's not Elite 2.0 in that sense. And then, not only does it have screws, it has opposing clips. You see there's these 2 clips here and here that, of course, match up to some little angled pegs, as well as 2 clips on this side. Now, it all meets up and clicks together. If the 6 screws and the 4 connection points, if that wasn't enough, they solvent welded each of the connection points. So yeah, you can see that, especially right there where it's white there, that's the solvent welding. I took a little razor knife and I actually just worked it underneath the tabs to free it up a little bit, and then used a flathead screwdriver to then lift the tab up. Had to do it carefully, recut a little bit of the solvent weld, and then pull it apart. And when it comes apart, the stock basically looks like a buffer tube. Yeah, it basically looks like a buffer tube. Now the, we'll say, buffer tube part, it has, as you can see, little tabs that stick out. So to get it out of this portion, which is where it comes in, you have to depress these 2 tabs simultaneously. I had to use a screwdriver to go in and get the inside portion and then pull it out. And the problem is that the mechanism for your adjustability is on the other side. Now, the only problem with that is that these parts will go flying. They did. They actually went flying in opposite directions One ended up in a blaster bin of mixed blasters that I've thrifted from future mods, and another one ended up halfway across my garage. So these two parts, they sit in this side, but again, it's not a true buffer tube, but we'll call it that. It was in this side. So while you're trying to actuate the two prongs and get this apart with all the solvent weld, these parts are going to go. Now, I'm going to leave them in here so that we can see. That nub is just a bit too small in my opinion. Yes, it interfaces, but if you're looking for real secure, extension here, like when it's extended, that you're counting on a very, very tiny little nub. So something could be done about that. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe it's not worth the effort. You be the judge. But the neat thing about this is it works exactly like their mag releases. Because the mag releases on Busby, they have a little spring-loaded gate, kind of. And it has a ramp that pushes into it to then, if it was a mag, you push this, and then release goes. Especially on the old ones. They just literally had the button, and it pushed a ramped piece of plastic and moved the mag release out of the way. So I thought this was neat, and I thought it was worth sharing. That is how the stock works, and that's why some may collapse, because the nub for the stock extension is just a little too small. Now, all that time wasted, and I know that might be something I cut out and put in a separate video, or we'll keep it all together. But we're going to get to the blaster now. First thing we'll have to do is to take off these few screws, and they're actually color-coded. These are black screws for the priming lever, which is pretty nice because I think everything else in the shell, yes, it's all silver. So we'll know exactly, when we go to reassemble this, we'll know exactly what screws go where. So thank you to Busby for that. Let's see. Oh, I see. Okay, that does not release there. So we'll have to actually take the lever off, completely off of both sides. Haven't taken it apart before, so this is going to be learning together. I'm hoping from the outside it doesn't look like there's really any solvent welding, and I hope that holds true. One of my favorite Busby blasters, the Revolution, has a solvent welded front, and that gets annoying. And the Busby Toys model 1902, which is in the Arsenal pack, that has one of the worst. And then along with, of course, the monorail. Those ones are really bad. So there we go. That looks like that must be on a press fit. That's going to be on a press fit spindle. You don't really have a reason to remove it. All you got to do is get it out of the way, and we can continue on with the shell. Now I noticed immediately, as soon as I flipped it over, we have one screw on this side of the shell. So go ahead and remove that. Outside of the lever, that is the only screw on the left-hand side. So let's move forward and continue. Now coming back from the big reveal, after I finished unscrewing the shell, I will note a couple of things. It's actually a very nicely put together shell. You've got the inserts for the grip that interface into the grip itself, so it's very secure, and with the 3 pegs they have plus 2 screws just for this point, that means no creaking, which is a big improvement over some of their past offerings in the past years. The shell itself is kind of a multi-stage disassembly that has interlocking points throughout. Like this white section that you see actually has 4 tabs that interface into the main, you'd say, the receiver of the Easy Fire. And then on top of that is the foregrip. And then under it is the mag well. This is big. So, if you do want a flared mag weld, it's a 3D print away. Somebody could easily design that. A flared mag weld for the Easy Fire. Because this thing is just a removable piece that screws through here. That's where the mag release is. It has 2 screw points. And it has, if you were to incorporate it, 3 tabs that interface into the receiver. That's big, in my opinion. That means somebody wants to go all in and make a flared magwell, they can, without having to do much shell cutting. It's just literally make this piece extended and flare it out. That would not be hard for those of you who are big into 3D printing. It'd be hard for me because I wouldn't have a clue what I'm doing. But I assume that because that is a detachable piece, that wouldn't be too hard to do. And of course, again, detachable, 3D printing, this is where I don't really care for 3D printed blasters as a whole. I like the core of the blaster to be injection molded. However, I am all for 3D printed accessories. Cover it in accessories. Just let me have the core at least be injection molded. This is that. This means, again, this top piece, you could 3D print an entire new one and have it look however you want. You could add side rails. I mean, you could buy the worker side rails and add them here anyways. Just, the metal ones, like add them right in here, wherever the lever would clear, and then screw them in from the back. That'd be nice. All in all, I think the shell has impressed me greatly. More so even now afterwards. Now the great reveal. It's a Buzz-Bee internals. What did we really expect? I mean, come on. Come on. It's Buzz-Bee. They found what worked years ago with, like the Champion, the Reaper, and they've improved it, tweaked it, and redone it many, many times, many different ways. Bolt action, pump, lever. And I don't find that to be an issue. I know some people have said they don't like checking out Buzz-Bee because it's all reshells of Champions. Well, then let's just quit everything we do with blasters. Because everything is a reshell of something else with a little tweak, a little adaptation at some point. I mean, if you go back, basically you might as well just say every semi-auto blaster is a Strife if it's a flywheel. Every full auto is an adaptation of the Rapid Strike or the Hyperfire. I mean, come on, what are we doing? Yes, it's basically a revolution, and I say revolution, flipped upside down. That's what it is. The just the mounting point is actually it's not even a revolution flipped upside down. It's a revolution. That is a revolution attachment point almost, because revolution is a top primer. It's basically a revolution with a lever action, and in a full form factor, which means it's going to be a very good modding platform. See, I see people comparing it to the Sentinel because of the lever action, but this is not a Sentinel. This is not a Sentinel at all, actually. In the sense that this has a different lever and is, of course, flipped upside down. We know the Sentinel, which I happen to have one I'm working on. So this is going to be a good comparison. I actually have the Sentinel right here, popped apart. I don't have the spring back in it, so you can see here, this Sentinel, it's different. And yes, this is one with a foam support breech, which is my goal for this. But you can see, the plunger tube is different, but pretty similar in size. I actually had a plunger tube crack on this one, that's why it's apart, and I have used acetone to do my own solvent welding to fix that. But you can see right here, top lever and an under lever. Similar in size, but yeah, it's basically a revolution. Because outside of the actual priming method, the lever action, it has more in at least compared to modern Buzz-Bee internals, it has more in common with the Revolution than it does. I mean, you could call all Buzz-Bee internals pretty similar. Like I said, they found what worked, and they went and ran with it. And they've got a system that works, and they use it in different ways, different shapes, different forms. but keep going with it. Setting my Sentinel aside, that needs to be finished off. I can see a couple of different things here. A couple of things I wanted to note. You've got the same dart guide, spring-loaded, mounted to the top of the blaster as all Buzby blasters now that are mag-fed have. This little spring-loaded guy here. I will be pulling that out. You've got a faux barrel here at the front, which is ideal, and it is a one-piece one. That's perfect for a Foam Sport aluminum breech because you epoxy it in place, you put a length of brass, and you're good to go. This Easy Fire is going to get that treatment. We'll see how it turns out after I hydro dip it. Has a very similar design in the dart tooth. That torsion spring, the kind that it flips down. We're going to bring this up here closer for you guys and gals to see. See, when the blaster is not primed, that's actually kind of cool. It has. I'm actually going to take the lever, plunger tube, and all that out of place. It's pretty cool. I'm going to pull all of this out. Well, it has no dead space in the plunger head anymore. And no, that's not a cup style seal. It has a true O-ring here. It has a true O-ring, but see, old Buzby plunger tubes had a gap in them. You know, and I filled them with, sometimes I fill them with hobby foam, sometimes I fill them with hot glue. And this one, I will not have to do that. It's just a solid core. Almost like they took the hint of some modders and said, hey, you know what? They're always trying to fill up our dead space. Let's just fill it for them. And pretty intrusive dart peg. That peg there, the very lip of it. Yeah, this is a men gun waffle head. That is basically about the same diameter as the inner diameter of the foam. So that's going to cause some drag, and it is. That's a simple thing. If you were just to simply snip that off, that would probably give you a little more performance. I don't know how measurable it'd be, but I'm gonna gut this whole entire breech and then slice it off. Probably at, again, it's hard to see. I've got a lot of light, so it's causing glare, but there's a joint right here, and typically with the Foam Sport breeches, that's where you, at least on the Sentinel, on the Thermal Hunter, and on the Frantic Fury, you cut it right here at that point. I've built at least one of each. I got 2 Sentinels with Foam Sport breeches, and I've got a couple of Frantic Furies or a couple Thermal Hunters and a Frantic Fury, and you cut them at this notch. There, you can actually see pretty good there. I will test it and see, and I will report when I do my actual mod on this to see if that's the case with this model as well. Don't jump to that conclusion based on this just yet. Now, the dart tooth is actually really cool here. The plunger tube, it has a little notch over here. You can see that sticking out. And you see it slides down this rail in the shell. And then it hits this, and that actually actuates the dart tooth. So until it's fully forward, as the dart's being scooped up out of the magazine and getting loaded, the dart tooth is up and held in place by this. And this retracts as the plunger tube hits it, drops the dart tooth out of the way so that you can then fire. And there's a torsion spring, as always, on Buzby dart teeth. They always have a little torsion spring down in. Kind of hard to see, but down in the shell is a little torsion spring. Now there's a retention spring right here that helps pull it and make it really snappy. So that they've tried to improve the response of that. The The paddle style magazine release is different than the type from old. Before, there was literally, you push the button up and it had a ramped piece of plastic, and as you push that, it interfaced with a slot. The slot's still there actually, and it pushed it back. This one simply pivots, pushes back. Easy to remove. Set this aside, because again, this one's going to get hydro dipped. Trigger, I actually want to note this. Check this out. On the trigger to the catch interface, there is actually, looks like some lithium grease. That is pretty nice. And I'm going to remove the lock. It's not held down. It's just sitting on a couple of pegs. So we'll toss it off to the side while I'm at it. Because of course all these parts are going to be coming out. But coming up here, real close, that is a very unusual catch for me, for Buzby at least. So, you prime it back, and that catches. So, we got spring tension going forward. This holds it locked in place, and so does this. The trigger is actually not, normally when you have a catch, the trigger has a ramp on it, and the ramp kind of goes the opposite of this, and it pushes the catch down, like through your physical force. It would pull the catch down out of the way, and the plunger rod goes, flying forward. This one, however, you are actually acting as a lock in this position. You are basically taking it out of safe, and so is this. And then, once both conditions are met, this can then go forward. It overcomes the catch and then flies forward. Interesting. That's very interesting. So this is a totally new design. The internals all look like Revolution, but this is totally new. I wonder why they went with this, other than maybe Buzby catches when you go beyond, if everybody noticed, I stick basically with 7, 8, maybe 9 kilogram springs. When you go up to 10 and 12, your Buzby catch has a short lifespan, because typical Buzby catch is just a little, basically it's like the size of a little flathead screwdriver. It's just a little piece of plastic sticking up, and it drops down, and the plunger rod has a hook, and as soon as you drop this down, boom, plunger rod goes flying forward. And Buzby catches can just snap, eventually under higher spring loads. I have not had one snap under 7, 8 kilograms, and that's why I normally build mine there, because I'm more about the lifespan of the blaster rather than absolute tip-top max performance. This may be their way of improving reliability. It's got like this double safe. The trigger is actually a safe. When you pull the trigger, see right now, it cannot fire. There's no way it can fire, which is kind of neat. And then you pull the trigger, still can't fire. This has to be held forward and then snap. Interesting. And then when you, of course, push it back, the whole catch does not slide down, because of course the trigger's back to the safe position. When you push this back, it's spring loaded, and then it just snaps back in place. And that's a much, much heavier duty catch as far as like the amount of material of plastic that's there. That is actually really cool. It's spring loaded back with a torsion spring. Same kind of spring. The same kind of spring that is in their dart tooth. It looks like maybe the exact same spring, which makes sense. Parts commonality on mass-produced items helps keep their costs down. If you can use this spring here on this model for its catch, as well as for the dart tooth, you only order one spring and you order 1,000,000 of them. That's cool. That's genuinely cool, and you don't have to do anything to disassemble that. And I don't foresee the need to up that spring or ever disassemble it, because the strength is based on, of course, that's a much thicker catch than the typical Busby catch, and it's resting on a solid point there, as you can see when it snaps back. And then, of course, it has a screw going through, so that's metal. So the strength is probably significantly higher on this catch. Neat design. Genuinely neat. And, again, neat design on the plunger rod. I don't need to do my normal filler. And we'll take the spring rest out of here. Now, when I actually get around to the modding, I will determine whether or not that thing has to come out or not. Because that seems like kind of a supplemental system in order to keep the catch. That might be needed still. Let's just take a look. Let's take a look how this interfaces with it. Yeah, here's how it all works. When the plunger goes to the very farthest position forward, it pulls that forward. So that means that then you can fire. Because, of course, all of this up here, if you're doing a sealed breech, all of this is gone. No need for any of this dart tooth engagement system. Now, if you're going to leave it and you're just trying to up it, and you want to keep it with a open breech design, then this is fine. You don't need to do anything with any of this. It's all in the blaster. But of course, I'm going to unscrew these and remove them because I'm going to paint, and I don't want any moving parts left in here. And I'll be painting, hydro dipping, and then putting it all back together with a sealed breech. So I no longer need any of this. This, however, may need to stay. If you remove this, you're relying on the trigger solely, which we'll see. But that's the internals of the Easy Fire. Of course, next video you see this blaster in will be when it gets hydro dipped and modded, and I will be testing the viability of a foam sport breech being used in this. If it can use one, it will get one. If it cannot, then I'll let you know. But till next time, this is Mongoose Jake with a long form guide on the disassembly and functionality, as well as the overall internals view of Busby's new Easy Fire. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope this is informative. Use it as a resource. Please share it around for anybody who's been asking about the internals of the Easy Fire. This should help everyone out. That's why I take the time to do it. I like the tinkering side of blasters. That's why I like springers. And this, I think, is the first time for a video of the internals. So please share it around. Let everybody know. I would appreciate it myself greatly. But next time you see this blaster, hopefully I've had a successful mod with the foam sport breech and a fresh hydro dip. The only thing I'm going to give away is that the white will stay. It's going to be the main body that gets the hydro dip. But this is Mongoose Jake saying thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.